Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about meditation, and specifically in this video I want to talk about two different kinds of meditation. Now I understand there's a variety of types of meditation. We can categorize, break down meditation in a variety of ways, but I want to specifically make a certain distinction. And the distinction is between discursive meditation and then other types of meditation, the more what we might consider to be Eastern types of meditation, things like mindfulness, things like Transcendental Meditation, TM. Now, there's a third category or a third grouping we could consider, which we're not going to talk about here, but that would be various kinds of guided meditations. A lot of it's just focused on visualization, directing thoughts in a certain way that someone leads you in, but particularly when you just practice yourself, your own, in your sitting in quiet. We have discursive meditation, and then these other kinds of meditation that I'm lumping together. So discursive meditation is the kind of meditation that is usually referred to when the Bible talks about meditation. Discursive meditation, we could also think of it as contemplation. Contemplation is a term that's sometimes used in Christian circles. You're thinking about something. You're meditating on something. You're specifically thinking often about a scripture passage and sort of mulling that over. Here's a definition for you. Discursive meditation is a thinking-oriented approach to meditation. One walks around a scripture or truth, seeing it from many angles. One reasons with oneself, moving from the doctrinal to the personal. Reasoning may be based on the 7 auxiliary questions: why, who, what, where, when, how, and with what helps. So you are thinking of a passage and you reflect on it in a variety of ways. And specifically, the goal in our spiritual life with meditation is to think about, what does this mean for me? What changes should I make, if any, in my life as a result of this? How does this apply to me? That sort of thing. That's the process of discursive meditation or contemplation. And I think of the verse in Psalm 1 as just a classic example of what we're talking about here. It says, "Blessed is the one whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on this law day and night." Now, the word that we have translated law, it's not just law books from God, but it's like the teaching. In the first few books of the Bible, the author was referring to the books they called the law, and we would consider that to encompass all of Scripture now. But it's meditating on this law day and night. It says, "That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers." Those are great promises about the fruitful living that will happen to the person who meditates on God's teaching. So that's discursive meditation. Now, a different kind of meditation is what is receiving, so much attention in our world today. What's on the receiving end of a lot of research, and we're going to call that mindfulness kind of meditation. Another type would be transcendental meditation. Now, in lumping them in the category of Eastern meditation, they've been popularized. They have their connection to various teachers from the Buddhism and Hinduism, from that family. Although I will say we need to be careful about this, because as Christians, there's some of this is also part of the Christian tradition. So be careful not to throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. We're going to talk more about that in a later video, but just to clarify here, this kind of meditation, the goal is to quiet the mind. to still the mind. You're not focusing your attention on a particular passage of scripture. In Transcendental Meditation, what you do is you seek to quiet the mind, and then you focus on a mantra, so that when your mind starts to go somewhere else, you bring it back to this word. And the same thing is true with various types of mindfulness meditation, where you might just simply use a word like one, or you might focus on the breath, and each time you start thinking, your mind starts to go somewhere else, you go back to that word or that thought, or thinking about the breath. And the idea is, once again, to calm the mind, to quiet the mind. Now, this is where we get into what I believe is a misunderstanding. Some people have a fear about this kind of meditation. At least some people that I know from a Christian background have a fear of this kind of meditation, because of the fear of trying to empty your mind, and what that might open you up to in terms of bad spiritual influences. And I'll just say this. I don't want to go into a long theological debate about that. I'll say this. Neuroscience has shown us that the mind doesn't stop. The mind doesn't empty. One way to think about it, I think this is a great analogy. You can't stop your mind from thinking any more than you can stop your heart from beating. Your mind produces automatic thoughts. What the meditation focus is meant to do is to train the mind, to direct the mind. And to the extent that we are involved in that can be a helpful practice. And again, I'm going to show in a future video some parts of the Christian tradition where this does actually come out of, or is talked about. So once again, we might make the distinction this way, that on the one hand, there is the meditation which is focused on directing the mind to a particular scripture passage, concept, idea. That would be discursive meditation, that's contemplation, versus meditation as quieting the mind, whether that be through mindfulness, some other kind of strategy. The reason this is so important, and we don't want to just throw this away because we're concerned that it's associated with different religious traditions, is that today, more than ever, we need help. We need training to quiet our minds, because our world is so noisy, and the environments that we're in are so stressful. We're so inundated with thoughts and marketing and messages, and our minds just go spin like crazy, so that it can be really helpful for us physiologically, neurologically. It's super helpful for us to get some white space, in our lives, in our heads, where we still are ourselves. And that reminds me of the Psalm 131. The writer says, "Lord, my heart is not proud, my eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with matters too great or too awesome for me to grasp. Instead, I have calmed and quieted myself like a weaned child who no longer cries for its mother's milk. Yes, like a weaned child is my soul within me." And so what a meditation can do for us, when it's focused on simply going back to a verse or a phrase, let's say in scripture, where we're not, just going all over the place trying to analyze it, etc., but we're just going back to repeating it. What we're doing is we're just allowing our minds to settle, allowing our minds to calm, and that has some significant neurological benefits. I did a video recently where I talked about a strategy for taking time each day to be with God, a daily quiet time. And in that approach, in that suggested method, I suggested that we would read a passage of scripture, like read a chapter each day. And then in that chapter, we would identify maybe a verse or maybe a phrase or a couple of verses that seem to be particularly relevant, particularly interesting, that we want to just sort of, focus on, dig into, and let that be kind of our thought for the day, our meditation for the day. And so we read that, and then what I suggest in that method is we take some time to meditate on that verse or phrase or a couple of verses. And that would be then discursive meditation, where we sit back and mull over, maybe repeat in our minds, reflect about what does this mean, what difference might this make, ask those, who, what, when, where, how does this apply, that kind of stuff. And then on that basis, move to prayer. And hopefully you're finding, if you're doing this Q4 spiritual quest, hopefully you're finding help in doing this discursive meditation. Okay, so stay tuned to this channel for more teaching about mental health oriented teaching that our spiritual life can really help us with. So have a great week.